All right.
Greetings, dear ones.
Yes, hello, dear.
May the peace of the Great Spirit be with you always.
So let us begin with the discussion. The first time I ever talked to Tobias was on an airplane in 1997, and I wasn't particularly spiritual or metaphysical. I was in the business world at the time, and Tobias came in on this plane flight and started talking, and hasn't stopped since. But initially, it was just me talking to Tobias. I hadn't even told Linda about it.
And how long did it take you before you broke it to Linda that this
It was about a year.
So you kept it to yourself for a year?
Yeah.
I received what felt like, what I experienced to be a telepathic contact from Bashar and his people. In that moment of the telepathic contact, a memory actually came back of having made an agreement somewhere prior to this life to do this.
I grew up in a Roman Catholic family of Sicilian immigrants. Most of them, even today, after I've been channeling Joseph for 15 years, don't know what I do. They have some idea, because I don't talk about it to them, and they don't ask me. They know I do something weird.
I was very lucky. I had a lot of support. My friends were very accepting. And that's one thing that I've always been really open about. I didn't really hide it, even from employers, you know, and I've always felt it was really important for me to be honest about that because I saw how it impacted people.
I started in a class where we were really studying making a bridge, an intrapsychic bridge to other sources of intelligence. And so it started in the context of that class.
See, I thought that all of these esoteric things were for older women over 40, and it would have nothing to do with men. So I was dragged to these two guys who channeled for me, and there was something, this was 3 years apart, they both told me the same thing. And that is when I had to start looking at how could guys 20 years apart in age, 3 years apart in ID, who never knew each other, give me information that was identical. And the information just happened to be that there was a master named Cryon who I was supposed to get a hold of.
An arrangement, so to speak, was made prior to the physical life of the channel within what you would call the oversoul of the channel, of which I am also a part. We are part of the same soul. You might refer to me as the channel's future self, and incarnationally speaking, I would look at the channel as my past self, just to put it in linear terms.
We are not happy with the way that things exist currently in our reality. All right, we are from what you would perceive to be the future. And we have come back to our past so that we may learn, all right, and so that we may assist the planet, because what's going on now is going to impact the entire universe.
Well, we would prefer that you ask us, if you like. There's nothing in particular we would like to say, except that we're here, and it's very, very pleasant to be here. It's a delight. It's part of sharing, with the big S, if you might say. The archetype of sharing is something we enjoy embodying.
I've had many, many lifetimes on Earth. I have deep love and compassion for humans because I remember what it was like to go through the things that humans are going through now. I remember the challenge in particular, the challenge of knowing at some deep level that you are a spiritual being.
Our goal is simply to help people live a more joyful, abundant life. And whatever it takes to achieve that, we're willing to do. And so that, in a nutshell, if you will, is our work.
You sit in the energy of a great shift. Many of you are feeling it. Maybe that's why you're watching this now. Maybe there's something that's happened in your life that would allow you for a moment just to open your mind and look inside something you always thought was untenable before, only reserved for those on the lunatic fringe before. And here you find instead wisdom pouring out. Perhaps you'll even feel the love of God pouring out.
There's a lot of things that are being transmuted and altered at this time. All right? You're finding some things out about some of your religious leaders. You're finding some things out about religion that just isn't holding true to you. It's not ringing true to you anymore.
Well, we want to tell you this, is that there is so much here that is hiding. But you must feel it. There has been such a shift in these last years, especially in the last 20 or so.
You're remembering who and what you are, and it doesn't need an intermediary.
This changeover from the old religious system that so many of you are familiar with is difficult, very difficult, because it holds on tightly. Those who have such a strong concept of God as some higher authority and is the only creator, they want to hang on to that dearly. They fear letting God go, their old God, you see, because they are so out of touch with themselves, they can't possibly even contemplate what it's like to have to go inside.
Since so many humans are still part of traditional religion, we realize it's hard for them to accept this concept and for them to absorb it and assimilate it.
There are mavericks out there. There are those who are going outside of the grid. There are those who are taking huge leaps of consciousness within themselves. They're looking inside for the answers rather than letting somebody outside do it for them. They are breaking this pull, this type of magnetism from mass consciousness and going off on their own.
How many aware people on the planet is it going to take that are able to put their awareness into their speech and into their actions before the collective consensus is affected? And that is yet to be determined. No one knows exactly when and how that'll happen.
They are going to be the examples to other humans that you can cross the chasm of old consciousness to new, that you can integrate the human and the divine right here, right now. You don't have to wait till you die to do it. You don't have to wait till your next incarnation. You can do it right here.
You will see within the next 10 and 20 years a change in verbiage as people are able to articulate more about self-responsibility. You're already seeing that. As people are able to articulate more about other levels of consciousness, the higher consciousness, you're already seeing more of that. People talk about it, my higher self, my higher consciousness. And then behaving from that level of integrity is what you will begin to see as well.
Children have always generally had that capacity, and they get learned out of it, shall we say, taught out of it, generally by the age of 3, definitely by the age of 7 in your reality, but now not so much anymore. They are coming through with what you call core fortification.
Because you needed that fresh energy coming to the planet. All right, you needed new ways of thinking and new ways of perceiving.
They are less prone to absorb the telepathic onslaught of negative belief systems from the rest of society. They simply won't participate in those beliefs.
So that's why they are in part your greatest teachers, because they're already ahead of the game in some ways.
You're actually seeing children who will have a different attitude than any children have had before. That is understandable in an evolved species. You are asking whether you, as an older human being, can change, and the answer is absolutely and yes, for you could become childlike.
The wisest you have ever been as human beings is when you were little children. They are just so uninhibited and joyful, and they live in the present moment with joy. They're not thinking about what's going to happen 10 years from now or even 10 minutes from now. They're living in the present moment with joy, and that is the key. You should all be like little children again. That's the best advice we could ever give to anybody.
There's a new wave of channeling that's starting to reemerge with the advent of the public awareness of quantum physics. Not that everyone is a quantum physicist, but that has opened people up to realizing that consciousness is so far beyond us and we can align with non-physical consciousness.
I receive these blocks of energy, and I can receive a block in half a second, and it'll take me 15, 20, 30 minutes to put it into words.
I have found over the years it gets clearer and clearer. There was a time when my channeling, the kind of channeling I do, was very different. I used to get information, wait, and regurgitate it. Now it's real time, and I feel it in real time in a trance-like state.
The human brain operates on a certain frequency rate, and in channeling, in the altered state, it changes frequency rates. And it becomes something that might be closer in frequency to their reality, which might exist on a higher level. At the same time, he's kind of doing the same thing, altering his frequency, his brain frequency, so that somewhere in the middle, the frequencies sort of meet and lock and become synchronized. And so what you're kind of getting in a channeling, as I understand it, is he's not really speaking a language, he's just sending thoughts. It's getting translated through my body into the language I was raised to understand, which in this case is English.
The changes in my life have been such an astonishing difference between who I used to be, my personality. Let me tell you, I didn't used to like groups, I didn't like people. I chose to be an engineer in a sound booth, so I would not have to deal with people. It's a good call. I can push a button and hear them or not, and then release it or hear them or not. I had full control over my social life. I liked one person at a time, usually a woman. And so that would be my life. I was not a well-read. I was not an orator. I wasn't an in front of the camera guy. No, it isn't me. I know that it isn't me, and I'm doing my best to be a purest vessel as I can for what it is.
It's the most comfortable thing I've ever done in my life. Now that I've gotten used to it, it took me about 10 years to get used to it.
Right.
But it's my life's work.
There was a misunderstanding about the law of attraction. The human, the limited human, uses it like this. I want a new car. And they expect it to come to them. Well, it will, but it will probably hit them and send them flying. The limited human says, I need $1,000. I have to be able to pay my rent. Where it is becoming distorted right now is that it is turning into a mental exercise. Somebody out there wants to write a book, hundreds of pages, outlining it. And then the moment the human starts to read that book, they go mental, and then it shuts down, you see. The mind can only go so far. The law of attraction is your spirit, your soul. It is the deepest parts of you. It's not what the brain can conjure up.
We understand that money is one of the symbols of abundance on your planet, and that's all well and good. You can have as much money as you want. But the idea really is to relax the definition that it has to come that way, because then you open the doors through which abundance could come in all the other forms in which abundance could come to simply allow you to do what you need to do when you need to do it. Sometimes that can actually just be being gifted something. That's still a form of abundance when someone gives you a gift, because you're creating a reality that has an open door to accept the idea that you can be given something effortlessly without having to go through any specific machinations to make it happen.
Society will tell you that you have to do X, Y, and Z in order to achieve a particular result, and we'll tell you that's not true. What has to be is that your vibrational state has to be in alignment.
The idea is to also examine the belief systems where you might be resistance to the idea of abundance, because many of you have belief systems unconsciously that actually keep the idea of the experience of abundance at bay.
The person is conditioned for some degree of abundance or non-abundance, depending on the pre-existing conditions with the parents growing up. And so conditioning is the first place to look.
For example, you are raised on your planet with all sorts of contradictory and conflicting belief systems about money, such as love of money is the root of all evil. You will never be a success unless you have a lot of money. How do you allow those two things to coexist side by side without being confused?
Because the conditioning will determine what the belief systems are and what the subconscious is holding on to. And if there's limitations there, then you want to heal whatever that misconception is, because all humans are deserving, innately, inherently deserving. It's just a matter of recognizing it, owning it, understanding it, and believing it.
Many people who believe, well, I will never be successful if I don't have a lot of money, but also believe that I will become a greedy person, a bad person, if I only get a lot of money, may never allow themselves to become physically wealthy, because it is more important to them to be a good person than to be a bad one. So if they associate the idea of being a bad person with having a lot of money, then that's a belief they need to look at, because they don't have to have that association. The idea is not that you have to become more abundant than you are. The idea is to get in touch with what you are saying you are abundant in. And if you're abundant on lack, you will experience an abundance of lack.
You have a conflict going on now between the limited human and the souled being. The soul doesn't really necessarily care about all of the human whinings. None of it matters. It doesn't matter if you didn't pay your rent. It doesn't matter if you were a multimillionaire. None of it matters. Those are things of concern to the human aspect only. What the soul cares about, and what your spirit cares about, is consciousness, which means awareness. Your soul and your spirit cares about the joy of being. The joy of being, in other words, experiencing what is in front of you to experience.
We will tell you thought creates form, all right, but your emotional states vibrated into being. So whatever you are putting out emotionally, you're going to get back energetically. And because the physical reality is reflecting the emotional, if there are lower frequencies that you're putting out, then what you're getting back in the physical realm are the lower frequencies.
The soul would rather have a bad experience for you than no experience at all. You see, those humans who try to run from experiencing things and doing things and creating things, they're really frustrating their own soul.
Whatever vibration you give off, whatever frequency you create or generate, determines utterly and absolutely whatever experience is reflected back to you from your reality, because physical reality really does not empirically exist apart from your definition of it. Even your own quantum physicists are beginning to discover this. So physical reality is likened to a mirror.
It's not going to say, well, Johnny's been a good boy today, so we're going to reward him, or Susie's been a bad girl today, so we're going to punish her. It's very impersonal. It has nothing to do with the traditional concepts of a punishing or judgmental God.
So whatever it is that you give off, whatever form you give yourself, however you define and identify yourself, is what is reflected back to you from your reality, so that you can decide whether you wish to retain that idea and that frequency or whether you wish to change it.
You create your realities, every bit of your realities, from birth to death, and everything in between.
The vast, vast majority, unfortunately, majority of humans spend their valuable and precious creative energies chasing after the little things.
From our perspective, the most effective way to alter your reality is to get in touch with, consciously, the beliefs that have created the reality you are experiencing so far. To find out what that belief is, to identify it and define it, will give you conscious recognition of what has been generating your reality. Once you have defined the belief, you can then understand as a mechanism how it has been generating the frequency that's caused the reflection you've been experiencing. And once you define it and recognize that as the mechanism, you can then replace it with a belief that you prefer. And you can also then believe, if you wish, that new belief will replace the old one just as effectively and create reality just as effectively as the old belief did. But once you replace the belief, and thus then it generates new emotions, new thoughts, and new behaviors, you will then get a new reality that is reflective of those ideas.
When your life changes like that, don't be surprised at the changes. That's one thing that always amazes the angelic beings that I work with. A human asks for change, and then their life starts changing, and then they, freak out, because they lose their job, and they lose their family, and they lose all that old baggage they've been carrying around, and they go into fear. But understand that as the changes begin, there's an evolution of energy. It is a cleaning house, getting rid of the old to make way for the new you.
We always say it's a bit like, placing your order with the universe, if you will. You climb the stairs to the rooftop of the building and you throw your boomerang out to the universe. That's your order. All right? And so you've taken yourself to a frequency level up here. So you place your order and then you start to worry about it. It hasn't come back yet. I must not deserve it. I'm not going to get it. So you drop yourself out. You go down a couple floors. Well, the order comes back and you're not standing on the roof anymore. All right? You've dropped out of the frequency range that exists in. So you've got to keep yourself the same rate at which you are placing your order.
It seems like you're saying that it's almost a choice, like setting goals or things. Something like that.
No goals. That is so mental. That is so, what do you say in your expression? So yesterday. So 80s, college was telling us. Forget the goals. It is an exercise in frustration, in futility. You, a sovereign being, don't need goals. Do you know why? I'll tell you why. Because you attract everything to you.
Certainly, it's never beneficial to anyone to do anything that does not feel good to them. And so many humans are doing things that don't feel good to them. And the perfect example of that is people are often in jobs they hate. They're doing the work for the money, not because they love it. So anytime you're doing anything that does not feel good to you or that does not resonate with you, you're doing yourself a great disservice. And you're distancing yourself more and more from your higher self.
When you make choices, you literally re-energize yourself. Think of yourself as a type of magnet or an attracting type of energy. When you make choices in your life, you attract all of the energies to you. We say to humans that all energy is there to serve you. It seeks to serve you. And the Master allows energy to serve them.
God is not this divine being who sits up there somewhere in the clouds on a throne and dictates to you what your life should be. God does not judge or criticize. God is not a single entity like that. It's the divine energy that permeates everything.
We understand that the term God may have many different interpretations on your planet. It is simply a generalization to make it easy to understand the concept that we are discussing.
But that word holds many connotations and unfortunately many negative ones for this planet because of how you have been conditioned with religion. All right, you've been sold a lot of lies, right? But there's also a lot of truth in there. And if you want people to believe something that you're selling and it's not the truth, you're going to sprinkle it with the truth. Because if you told someone a bold-faced lie, guess what? They'd know you're lying.
People project humanity onto God, yes. And the religions have done this as a way to help people conceive God. And it certainly makes sense. If you've got to have something to sink your teeth into, something to imagine as an image of God, then you need a religion, quote unquote, an organization, a codification of what God is into a personification. And in history, that's what's happened. People have had to project some form of personification onto all that is in order to conceptualize it.
As you come into this era of I am, it is also discovering that this God that humans have been seeking for the last 10,000 years doesn't exist out in heaven somewhere, isn't hidden somewhere. It is right here. It has always been there.
There's a shift. We would suggest some are saying there's a new myth of God. A new myth of God arising at this time. And that is a very exciting prospect, to take the idea of God into a larger context of God, goddess. All that is, that God is not simply a masculine image per se, but is a principle that is both masculine, feminine, and the synergy of both.
Everything that exists, even that rocky hillside outside your window there, everything that exists has a divine aspect. It is part of what you call God or goddess.
And you don't like that. The viewers don't like that. The watchers don't like that, for they wish to put God on the pedestal. And they want to say all good things come from God, and they are taught they are nothing from birth. And it's not that way.
We define love as the choice to see the divinity in all beings, not just human beings, not just spirit beings, but in all beings, all that is.
Often we will use all that is, because that's what the infinite is, the one is. By definition, it is all that is. There is no outside to it. There cannot be an outside to it.
That is, in our view, what God is. And so you are, literally, you are all God. You're all goddess. And you have the power that goes along with being divine, even though you don't think you do most of the time.
Magnificent, all of you. My definition of God are the ones I sit in front of. You want God to be one thing, for you in 3D. You want to worship God, for you in 3D. And I tell you this, that the day that you start suppressing what you've been told and opening the door to what God really is, in will come God, and it'll have your face on it.
What do you say to people who really do not feel empowered?
We would suggest that if people are not feeling empowered, the first thing we do is remind them that they are telling themselves some lies. Yes. When people say, I know I'm powerless, or I'm feeling powerless, we say, that's a story you're telling yourself. That's a story you're telling yourself based on fear.
I'm going to simplify this for you, and perhaps some may think the answer is a bit terse, but just get over it. You're wallowing in your own self-pity. You have set up an energy of being a victim of life, a victim of other people. You're allowing them to steal your energy and to steal your heart and your consciousness. You're in a type of trap, and you're letting it happen. You decide one day when you get out of bed, or one night when you're taking a walk, that you're just going to get over it. You're going to stop letting others take from you, and you're going to stop taking from other people as well. You're going to be whole and sovereign. And it is truly that simple. You know what makes it complex and makes it difficult for humans is they develop all these multi-step programs, and they write books, and they have seminars and classes, and they get more and more and more into the mind and away from the true matter at hand. You are an angelic being. You are God also. Get over all the rest of it.
Human beings want to compartmentalize everything. They want to know the steps of ascension. They want to know itemization by itemization, what things they must do in order to please God. Never understanding that if they are pieces of God themselves, that there is a switch inside that is all ready to go. That switch, known very well in spirituality all over the planet, is the one that gives you permission for the epiphany, for the enlightenment to begin to pour in, for answers It is slow, and you must unlearn what you have taught. But it is true. Any human can, no matter what the situation, no matter where they are or who they are.
In this so-called New Age or Age of Awakening or Age of Spiritual Awareness on your planet, the whole idea is that you are really at the end of the cycle of limitation that you have imposed upon yourself for thousands of years. And you're awakening into the remembrance that you don't have to do it that way.
There's only one question that you should ask. It's the fast track, as they say, to spirituality. It is the fast track, as they say, to getting whatever it is that you have come for. Human being who would be watching this now, whatever is before you and whatever challenges are there, the fast track to all of that is to get into a meditative state with pure intent and say to God, to Spirit, I love you. I know you are there. Show me what it is I need to know. And then don't expect an answer to fall upon you in a physical way, but instead expect that you have connected to what seems to be the chaos of the system of the universe, connected in such a way that the synchronicity will begin to appear in your lives like little open doors here and there to guide you to the places that will answer the questions that you would have had otherwise.
There are no victims. There are absolutely no victims.
There are only willing participants, all right? There are no victims. So you can create your reality, all right? You can unplug from mass consciousness and create a separate reality. You are an immortal being who has chosen to project itself into this game.
You're a sovereign, self-sustaining being.
You're powerful creators. You create everything you've ever experienced. And the only alternative to that is to make yourself a victim of fate or whatever, of my mother and father's mistreatment of me or whatever. Now we realize people don't want to die of some painful illness or in a car accident or whatever, but nothing happens to you. Every death, we have said several times over the years, every death is really a suicide because nothing can happen to you vibrationally that you're not a party to, if you will. In other words, if you're constantly afraid of dying in a car accident, you're probably going to die in a car accident. If you're constantly believing that your body, no matter what its condition, healthy or unhealthy, has the resources to bring itself back to a state of perfect health, then you're going to achieve that state of perfect health.
So, if someone gets cancer,
Yes.
they want to put themselves through that experience at some level?
It isn't that the physical personality necessarily wants to have that experience, but it may be part and parcel of belief systems that have been bought into and ideas and definitions that have been bought into that allow you to experience the idea that you are a victim of something or out of control. But the idea is to learn through that you're not, and that you actually can create something else, that you actually can transmute that idea, that experience into something else, or learn from it in a positive way. And the thing to also remember is that regardless of what happens to the physical personality, the spirit, the being, the consciousness is eternal and infinite and has the capability of experiencing a number of things. And even though it may experience for a time the idea of something that causes it pain and suffering, it is a temporary experience that the soul can nevertheless use to its benefit.
You know, pain serves its purpose. It is a catalyst for change, because if you were happy and content all the time, you probably wouldn't move, would you?
Probably not.
No. So it serves as a catalyst, and we will tell you pain is perception, nothing more.
I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that, again, this pain must be experienced. I am simply saying that it is part and parcel of the definition of the reality that you have decided to experience, the physical time-space reality. Such things are possible in that experience. But the idea is to learn through that experience that you actually don't have to suffer, that you can remember you are creating your life, and you don't have to be the victim of belief systems or definitions that say you are out of control.
The basis of your existence is freedom. You all have free will. So you're free, and we realize many people would disagree with us, and many don't see it like this, but you're all free to do whatever you want. You're all free to be whatever you want. You're all free to have whatever you want.
There are no victims here. There are only willing participants. So when you are allowing others to subjugate you, the moment you stop, you see that you have power. So the whole thing was set up. This reality is showing you that you have power.
Even though many of you choose to shackle yourselves and to curtail your freedoms, that is a choice too. But you are free.
About 15 years ago, I started having some visions, and I didn't know what they were. So I started doing some research on past lives, and I came across channeling, and it was the early 90s, and I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anybody who did it, and I just knew it was something I was supposed to be doing. So I found a couple books and did some of the exercises and had really visceral responses, but nothing really happened. I was trying to channel verbally, and my limbs would tingle and my eyes would water, and so I would try it periodically and kind of put it aside and come back to it, and took a meditation class and did some other things and did some work on myself. And about a year after I started trying, I sat down one day and just knew I was supposed to have a pencil and paper, and started to do automatic writing, and it's kind of developed over the years.
What really started me on the path of channeling was reading the book Opening to Channel by Sanaya Roman and Dwayne Packer. I've read the book several times and followed their procedures, and the end result of that was the spirit guide came to me. She appeared to me as an American Indian woman, and her name was Tamara. And so I channeled her for a few years. I was aware, sort of on the periphery of my awareness, this male Indian. I didn't know who he was, or I didn't know if it was real or if it was my imagination or where it was coming from. I didn't really trust myself as a channel then. And so it was kind of a scary process for me in the beginning, and I didn't have a lot of confidence in myself. But I knew there was something there that was beyond me.
Well, I have several families, as many of us do, and I have more than one marriage. The wife that I have now, I was introduced to in the recording studio. And I was on my third Cryon book at the time. And so we dated for a long time before I ever opened my mouth of what I was doing. And I remember the day when we were going to go have spaghetti, and we never made it to the spaghetti place because I brought my books. I said, it's now or never, she's got to know, because I felt my heart, what was going on, and I said, I've got to, it's either make it or break it right now. So I brought my books to her house, and we never got out of there, because she actually said, she took it all in, and she said, I'm going to have to think about it. She read the books and called me up, and she says, this is everything I've always believed. Wow. So we had a good meeting and melding at that time.
At a certain point, she actually said, well, she'd like to hear, what Tobias has to say. So we sat down and here in the living room and did our first channel with Tobias talking. And At a certain point, I started working with a psychologist who had some tough clients, difficult issues, and it would be the psychologist, myself, and of course Tobias. And I really enjoyed that. It was dealing one-on-one in a very intense way. But then as word about that got out, then people wanted to do it in a group.
You, the psychologist, Tobias, and a client.
And a client, right. And at some point, we literally started here in our living room at home, and just a small group of about a dozen people. And it's now grown into what it is.
I worked with psychologist Dr. Margot Chandley, and she would work with me to help me practice going into trance and let the entities talk, and it felt very natural to me all the way along, because I was always having the reassurance from my telepathic connection with my unseen friends that everything was going along as scheduled. And then I would get updates and recommendations and from them and things I could do to prepare, and it all felt really, really comfortable and very, very aligned. Very, very nice. Plus I had this wonderful psychologist that I could talk with about it and debrief about it, so I never felt odd or unusual. I know that some people have had it be very strange and unsettling, and it was never that way for me at all.
I was actually introduced to a channel who was, doing public sessions at the time. And I went and I listened to the entity coming through that channel for several months and thought that the information had value. It was interesting, seemed to be helpful to people who were asking questions of the entity. But at one point during listening to that entity, they actually offered to teach a class on channeling. And I went into the class not because I wanted to become a channel. That was the farthest thing from my mind. I just wanted to further my research. I wanted to see how something like channeling could be taught, because I didn't understand that that could be done. Under one of the guided meditations that the entity was giving, I received what felt like, what I experienced to be a telepathic contact. I decided, well, whether it's really another entity or whether it's just a portion of my consciousness, what I did understand is that channeling itself is an actual altered state. And in that altered state, people have the ability to access information that they might not otherwise be able to in their normal daily waking state. And so in knowing that that information might be able to give people a different perspective on their lives, might be able to help them make the kind of changes that they wanted in their lives constructively, I decided that was reason enough to go ahead and experiment and see how far the channeling would go.
When you come to Earth and you embody yourself in this thing called biology, your physical body, you tend to lose the remembrance of who you truly are. Part of it, I guess you could say, is a good thing, because it allows each of you to truly experience what it is like to live in an illusion.
Because you have been cocooned, all right, isolated. Your history has been rewritten so that you don't remember who and what you truly are.
So it's so important to start waking up to the truth of one's own nature. And the truth of one's own nature is what one finds when you go within and discover the connection to all and to God. God is all that is, that lies deep at the heart of the true self.
If it was intuitive of what you had going on this planet, we might as well just turn on the lights and everyone goes home. You see, there must be secrets. There must be an overlay. There must be a veil. There must be the predetermined energy that says, can't be so. This creates a little mountain to climb, does it not? Those who are watching this now, be aware that this is part of the mountain to climb. For it has to do with your belief, what you've been told, as opposed to what you feel.
There are still what you might call newcomers on the earth who haven't necessarily run the gamut of all the different kinds of incarnations you could have as a human on earth, but the majority of you, yes, have. experienced just about everything you can possibly experience. You have killed and been killed. You have been a benefactor and been benefited. You have been every gender, every experience. You have been every family member. You have had just about every disease that can be had. You have experienced absolute joy in certain lives, freedom, fear, everything, the whole spectrum. Most of you at this point.
They always describe it as being like a roller coaster. You know, if you've never been on one before, you kind of get on, you don't know when you're going to go up, when you're going to go down, when you're going to go around the corner, and it's a little scary, and you know, it can be a little fearful, but then you get off the ride and it was great and you want to get right back on. And that's what it's like through the incarnational cycle. You go through and it's a little scary and a little bumpy, but as soon as you get off, you're like, that was a great ride, I want to go on it again. So that's how they describe it to me, that once we see the big picture and understand it, we're excited to go back down.
Most people don't believe in anything before life. Nothing whatsoever. So you have 85% of the earth, according to Time magazine, that believes in a religion that supports the afterlife, and yet you have only about 4% of the earth, which would be Hindu and Buddhist, who actually believe in a forelife, which doesn't make spiritual sense. Somehow, mom gives you birth and you have a soul forever. But that's the teaching of the church.
But there was nothing before. Yeah.
There was nothing before. Ask them.
Yeah.
There was nothing before.
You have pretty much all done it all. That's why you're arriving at the end of the cycle of limitation, because there's really not that much left to explore. You have all done it all. So now you are remembering, you're waking up out of that particular dream, because you're at the end of that dream, almost.
Because when you come into a physical existence, you become a creator in the physical dimension. You're creating your life and your the activities and your experiences, your responses to the experiences. But it's all about the progression of the evolution of one's soul, isn't it? Yes? And reincarnating allows you more and more understanding and knowledge through experience.
You exist. That will never change. The form may change, but the fact that you exist will never change. Existence does not become non-existence, because non-existence is already full of all the things that will never exist, and there is no room in non-existence for the things that do exist. Existence is the only quality existence has, to be. There is no not to be.
Jesus.
A great teacher. No more the Son of God, however, than
I am.
you are. Exactly. A great teacher, yes.
It makes a good story. Humans need a hero. They need sports heroes. They need political heroes, although there's not many. They need technology and science heroes, but they also need an icon that they can look up to and worship, because they don't go within.
The archetype of the Jesus, the Savior, is still very powerful on the planet. And yet that slowly is being replaced by people finding it within themselves, instead of needing it to be out there as a figure.
In the early days of the Catholic Church, there was, how would you say, a basic understanding that Jesus would appeal to the masses because he was a human, and that he would be such a fine example. It took them well over 500 years to even decide amongst themselves how he would be presented to the public. In your modern terms, would be how his PR campaign would be handled. So they developed this very interesting but not necessarily accurate story of Jesus, which wasn't even his real name to begin with. It was, when he walked on earth, it was Yeshua ben Joseph. They need someone to look to and to worship, and their leaders, even religious leaders, who have no idea of what the I am principle is about, who have no idea that the God is already within. They encourage their groups to worship some far-off Jesus, because it is a wonderful way of perhaps what you would call anesthetizing them a bit, take their mind off their daily pain, but it's also a wonderful way of controlling. So whether it is the Christian church, whether it is so many of the other religions, they create these icons. But the icons are out there somewhere, and they're generally hardly based in reality.
For those of you who are, extremely light, guess what? You've had extremely dark lifetimes. You've probably done some extremely dastardly deeds. So that's difficult. A part of your quote-unquote New Age movement wants to be all light and all happy, and we'll tell you that is not what this lifetime is about, because there are prejudices there. All right? And the idea here is that you release all of that prejudice, all of that judgment against the dark, because you cannot have one without the other.
Those who are biased to the light only are basically imbalanced. And they're going to have to then, sooner or later, experience their dark part, which they're deathly afraid of. They're afraid of that dark part within. Why do they label it dark? Why do they think it's evil is just another aspect of them?
One doesn't want to be in the light by being in the denial of one's shadow.
The idea, remember, is that growth is the product of integration of all that you are, not the exclusion of anything. It is the allowance that everything is valid, the balancing of everything is valid. That's why the more evolved you become, you actually become more aware of more dark, because you're willing to integrate it all and balance it all within you.
And there are some who want to, step into that space and say, oh, I'm nothing but light. I haven't had any dark lifetimes. And we will tell you it is precisely the opposite. Because usually it's not until you have mastered the dark or some aspect of the dark that you are given abilities and to work in the light as well.
Momentum to snap into the light is actually gathered by exploring the darkness as deeply as you can.
Cryon says on the other side of the veil, it is much, much different. We don't have the minds we do now. We don't have the logic we do now. And this is like a play. This is, Cryon says, it's very much like a play. When the guy, when the curtain closes and the guy with the knife who has been murdered by the other guy, the curtain closes, they all get up and go have a party. There's no animosity, they don't care, they don't carry a vendetta. And so when we're on the other side of the veil, it's like we regroup and come back in.
So there are really no victims or villains?
There are no victims and villains. And this, of course, will fly in the face of every single teaching that anybody's ever heard in this nation. There is also no heaven and hell. This is a very interesting theme, and I'm glad you asked that, because when I'm in Israel, which I have been numbers of times, especially in the heart of it, in Jerusalem, these questions are asked. It's inconceivable that Hitler is not in hell. There is a line you cross. That guy has got to be being punished right now. According to my channeling, the men and women I work with who channel, that is not the case. He came and he did something. He went to the dark side, if you want to call it, and a whole bunch of people went with him. And he had the choice, and so did they. And he created something that we just find abhorrent and just awful. And yet, when the curtain closed, he got up and everybody gave him a party. That being who was Hitler agreed to be of service to that collective, to that group, through that genetic line. And that's a hard one for humans to see, all right? That's a very hard thing for them to begin to forgive. And then that goes back to the veil, of why the veil is placed there, here, so that you don't remember everything.
Everybody who was what you would call adversely or tragically affected by the era of Hitler and by Hitler himself was there because they created together, they co-created that reality that was, from a human perspective, certainly a very tragic and sad and awful time in your history. But Hitler was the catalyst for growth in many people who participated in that Holocaust, and it really was a Holocaust in human terms. And so good did come out of that.
The fact that such a being existed in your reality is part and parcel a reflection of what your reality allows, and thus it is a service to you to show you this is what you support. Is this what you want to continue to support, or do you want to change this in the future? So it can be used as a service in that way. So yes, on a soul level, it can be looked at as a service, even though on the human level, it may only be seen as an atrocity.
We do not teach or believe that you have to repay past debts, if you will. And that's what many people see karma being. Like your past misdeeds from this lifetime or another lifetime, you got to make up for those. And that's, in our view, nonsense. If you want us to be more blunt about it, it's bullshit.
Discussing what you would call the concept of sin has been done many times. And you will know that I will say this, and it is controversial to almost all that you have been taught. There is no such thing. Sin has been and is created by human beings, wishing then to assign something to it. It is often then control. It is often then punishment. For you will have some guru tell you what is appropriate and inappropriate to God.
You are not in any way shackled by the past of this life, past of many lifetimes ago. And so there's nothing to repay.
And what you might say to that is that there must be inappropriate behavior. When you see those who are in prison for certain acts that are atrocious, when you see those who take lives, you would say, surely that is inappropriate. And I will say to you, that is exactly what it is in the scheme of the balance that you have chosen to create as your culture. But spiritually, it follows a pattern where those who have done it by free choice. And when they get to the other side of the veil, there is no judgment. Therefore, sin, by the very nature of its definition, does not exist as sin. There are no sins, that is to say, things that you do, which then you will be punished for.
All your power is right now, so it doesn't matter what's happened in the past. All that matters is where you want to go from here, and you have all the power to go wherever you want from here. Right here and now, you have that power.
When you don't remember that you are eternal and infinite, the physical personality ego, the construct that you create, that is the physical mind, does not know that death does not equal annihilation. When the physical mind thinks that death equals non-existence or annihilation, it then goes into survival mode, panic, fear, doubt. But when it understands that physical reality is simply a temporary manifestation, a mask, if you will, a projection of a greater consciousness that you are, and you understand that you always exist, then the fear of death vanishes.
Let us say each time you conquer a fear, let us say each time you discover something about timing, your spiritual jar fills up a little inside. This spiritual jar is your Akash. It keeps track of the energies that you solve. And when you come back in the next time, all of that is ready at the same level you left it. You never have to relearn it.
And many of you ask, what role do past lives play? And we will tell you, a very big one. All right? And they're not really past, they're concurrent. So as you are both working on things, both lifetimes are working on things, you are clearing things out energetically, all right, through both emotional bodies. That's enough to make your head spin.
We have shamans walking around. We have the past Buddhas walking around who will never be Buddhas and never be shamans. But it's there. And all their life experience is there. Free choice determines whether they will open the closet. And when they do, you will find them putting upon everything they have learned. This is how you can have someone who is completely untrained in spiritual things suddenly become a master. It seems to be out of the way things work, but believe me, they have paid their dues, and they have studied, and they have had lifetimes of learning, just like you have.
Why are so many humans afraid of death?
Well, that goes back to conditioning as well. That you are disconnected from source energy. So if you're disconnected, then you don't remember what's going on. All right, and that was part of the game. It's just the way the game was set up. But there are more and more of you who are awakening and remembering that you are immortal beings.
Transition or death is always a pleasant experience. It's
Always a pleasant experience.
we're talking about at the moment you made your transition.
When you come to the planet, there is a predisposition, you might say a groove that you would travel in, that has upon it a potential of your time of death. It is the human being who understands, however, that they can pop out of that groove and go in another direction with their own free will, which means that they will never meet their death in the groove. Therefore, we are saying this, that although the death is a potential around you all the time, and at some level that potential is known, you are still in control on this planet of your life in a grand, grand fashion. There is no predetermined time that you are going to die. You will choose it at the moment by free choice in real time in 3D.
The idea for most individuals when they pass on into spirit is that it's like for a physical person waking up from a dream. Just as you wake up from a dream during the night and say, oh, well, that's just fading away, that wasn't real. So too, a soul may find itself, a spirit may find itself suddenly in spirit going, oh, this is who I really am, that was just a dream.
Dying is the easiest thing you'll ever do, because you are re-emerging back into the world of spirit, back to where you came from, back to your source. And it's always, it's like a breath of fresh air. It's like taking off a tight shoe. You feel that kind of sense of relief and release. And if you could get a small glimpse or remembrance of it, you would never fear death again, and you would go through the rest of your lives with a smile on your lips and with joy in your heart.
There are energies of angels that you would call specialists. We're not compartmentalized to that degree, for we're all one, but we take our tasks and we do certain kinds of things for one another. And in that, you might say, some then come into the planet and some then are support. There are far more supporters than there are humans who come in. I am a supporter.
All humans have guides and helpers. Yes, you are all connected to much larger families than you may be aware of. Many of the guides are simply friends that you've experienced other lives with, who simply may not be incarnating in the same time frame that you are, have remained in spirit for that duration to help you from the other side, so to speak.
You are never alone. There's always help out there, no matter how far down you think you've fallen.
The idea is that often a guide will attempt to remain unobtrusive also in giving you the information, because the whole point of guiding you is to actually teach you to be your own best guide. So the idea is that many times a guide will use the props that exist in your own physical reality already to get you to pay attention to information that they feel you might need to know or that might serve you. So for example, synchronicity in life, those little coincidences that aren't accidental, of just winding up at the right place at the right time, overhearing exactly the conversation you needed to hear exactly at the right moment to be able to get that next piece of information you needed at exactly that moment, may have been the work of your guide steering you in a certain direction and not delivering the information directly, but knowing the information was available to you in your reality already. If they would only nudge you down a certain street at a certain time, that's all they may need to do. Sometimes you might actually hear them more strongly and more directly. You might experience them in your dreams. Very often, dream communication is one of the strongest ways that guides will communicate with you. And many of the so-called dreams that you may remember when you wake up may not always have just been the random collection of processing going on in your brain from the day's events, but may actually be representative of a communication or conversation you're having with friends and family on other levels.
Emotional body creates the physical template. All illness starts in the emotional field, without exception. If it's a genetic mutation, that starts in the emotional field, and it is something that has been so generously left behind by one of your ancestors. All right, they had a big emotional issue, a block. It altered the genetic material, and that got passed down through the genetic line.
Many people carry with them, even throughout their lives, even unto their deathbed. Resentments and guilt and worry. And that is where all physical illness comes from these negative emotions that people nurture even.
It all goes back to the emotions, because the emotional body creates the physical reality. So if you're talking about weight and health, you know, how you are feeling about yourself is determining your physical body more so than what you're consuming and how you're exercising, which is a very different way of thinking for many of you, because you're conditioned to think that it's all physical, but it's not. It's all emotional.
Make no mistake, there is no thing as a generic human being. You come from such a different platform, different lives, different cultures, and you arrive in this culture. Some of you may wish to only eat one kind of thing, some of you wish to eat another. Do what your body feels best with, that results in the most energy and the most appropriateness for you.
At the deepest level in the human psyche, there is this archetype called separation, and it's based on the fact that you separate yourself from source when you choose to become born. And everyone has that experience over and over and over. Every lifetime that you choose to be incarnated, you are experiencing separation, separation from source, separation from unconditional love, separation from the light, separation, separation. I feel disconnected, I feel separated, something's missing in my life. The desire for something transcendent becomes very, very strong. And instead of seeking it authentically within, through one's spirituality, people will often seek it through external substances and mind-altering substances, seeking something transcendent through the use of drugs and alcohol.
Which usually represents a belief system in the person that thinks something is missing that needs to be replaced by something artificial. If that doesn't exist as a belief, then you will find that people will naturally ingest whatever food or liquid is in keeping with their best benefit.
Many of them are using to numb, all right? They don't want to feel the pain, yes. All right, some are very empathic, all right, and they are very in tune with what's going on with the planet, with other people, and it's too much for them to handle. They don't want to feel it because they're not clearing out their own field, all right? They're taking it on, and that's a choice. You don't have to take on others' energy. You can be aware, you can be one who is sensitive, but that doesn't mean that it is your responsibility to take it on.
The new consciousness right now is about the I am. And while to some it may sound very selfish, it is actually about discovering yourself.
Working on yourself is the greatest gift that you can give to humanity. And that sounds so self-centered and so negative, but that's how you've been conditioned.
It is about putting yourself first, loving yourself first, taking care of yourself first, having compassion with yourself first, and knowing yourself first.
If you want to keep someone from accessing their own power and helping to heal the planet or helping to heal mass consciousness, you're going to tell them that it's very selfish for them to look inside.
Instead of worrying or being afraid of what's going on in the world around you, just focus on your own world.
Then, and truly then, you are able to help humans, but you'll understand only humans that are choosing help.
Look at your issues. Where are your buttons being pushed? Where do you feel fear? Where do you feel that you shrink away? You know when you've got a fear. All right? Many of you are quite aware of it and decide, you know, I really don't want to look at that. And so you don't. All right? And you know what we're talking about. There are times when you feel yourself tense up and you're conscious of it. So it is a choice.
Learn to be with yourself. Go off and take a month, 40 days perhaps, as Yeshua did. Go off by yourself and learn to be with you. Learn that you don't need to steal energy from anyone else.
There must be a balance between the intellect and what you would call the heart. And that person who is balanced, that human who is balanced, will show. You'll know them. For they will seem to be more gentle. They seem to be more open and less judgmental. This would be the balance. You might say, well, they are heart-based. They are not. They are balanced. Never throw away what your truth is. Never throw away what your logic tells you, but temper it with the emotion of your heart and become balanced.
There's a big misunderstanding in society and in many cultures that if you're going to become spiritual, you're going to get real restricted. And that's because of the old dogmas of different religions, different churches in different ways. But spirituality itself is not at all restricting in one's way of experiencing life. The true hunger for knowing one's own divine nature, for experiencing one's own divine nature, that true hunger can lead you into great discovery and great freedom, great freedom.
Each of you standing alone is fully consciously aligned with your higher self is far more powerful than many millions who are living in fear or doubt or anger. One person.
There's a great sage who likes to say, if you want enlightenment, lighten up. And certainly so, that is absolutely true. But we would suggest that one of the great secrets to lightening up is being willing to heal and transform one's angers and fears so that the joys can be fuller and richer, and so that creation can become a very active principle in your life.
The foundation of our work here with John is simply to encourage people to be joyful, to find good in the world around them, to look for it, deliberately look for it, not just to stumble over it accidentally, but to look for the good, first of all, in themselves, to be appreciative for this gift of life that they have in these human bodies. All of you are physical extensions of your God selves. Be joyful. Be joy.
You know, you all are beautiful beings of light. All right, and we are very honored to have an opportunity to speak to you or to work with you. And you really are very special and very rare. This planet has some very beautiful things on it. And the range and expression of love is amazing. The kind you have with a friend, the kind you have with a lover, the kind you have with a lifelong mate, with your brother, with your mother, with your father. They're varying shades, and that is what is so special about the love on this planet. It's not like that everywhere. Enjoy being human while you can. Enjoy the things that the physical world has to offer. Have fun, play, love, laugh, and allow new ideas and new inspiration to come in.
Imagine yourself singing new songs, creating music, writing books, painting pictures. Imagine yourself waking up in the morning and looking forward to the day, not how you're going to get through the day. Open yourself up now. Go beyond. And don't be afraid of what you're going to lose, because you didn't need it anyway.
If you lift the veil and start to see all that is here, what you're going to see is pure love. What you're going to see within that is an uplifting potential spirit, not only for you, but those around you. Your life will change dramatically at that point at which you decide to eliminate drama. Hook up to that which we would call the connection to the other side of the veil. And I want you to know this, dear human being. And it doesn't matter what religion you are in the planet. you can still be that and love God in this way. No matter what the doctrine is on the planet, you can still be that and love God in this way. This is not climbing out of one box into another. This is discovering the core issue, and that is that you always have been and always will be in control of your life as a piece of God in this universe. And so it is.
And so we thank you for the gift of sharing, because you allow us the gift of seeing through all of you that many more ways that creation has of expressing itself, and it expands our understanding of all that is. So we simply extend our unconditional love, our deep appreciation, and heartfelt thanks for the co-creation of this transmission. And we bid you a fond and exciting good day.
Thank you so much. That's so great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're back.
I'm back. I'm back.
How did it go? Consider the body a vehicle like a car. I'm usually the one behind the driver's seat, behind the wheel. But when Bashar comes through, it's like I slide over to the passenger seat.
I have memories of other lifetimes where I've had similar abilities to connect to other realms and dimensions, but not exactly like this.
It's like you've somehow reached beyond your normal, ordinary self. That's how it feels to me.
There's times in a channel where I just go out, God knows where it is. I mean, I'm aware of things happening in the room, but at a certain point, even that kind of goes away.
I get to experience another reality altogether when I channel. I get to experience an entirely different worldview.
You are the first to interview Kryon and channel.
I almost feel overwhelmed, really.